I have returned from the grave after my great recognition from the man himself. I had thought I achieved all I needed, but the AP government curriculum still needs me to save the day. I am sorry, but with that out of the way, let's get into the video.
Baba Booey.
WestJet.
What is up, moles and border patrols? WestJet 6'5", global Venezuelan trillionaire here, and today we're going to be rating the AP government Supreme Court cases from worst to best. Oh, and literally 0% of you are subscribed, so be sure to subscribe. Coming in at dead last is Brandenburg versus Ohio. In this case, the court actually sided with a KKK leader and upheld his free speech. Now, I am all for human rights and everything like the freedom of speech, but I feel that if you are actively taking away other people's rights by being a racist, then you shouldn't be sided with. Coming in at number 11, we got Dred Scott versus Sanford, probably one of the most infamous cases in U.S. history. Here, the U.S. Supreme Court stated that enslaved people were not citizens of the United States, and therefore could not expect any protection from the federal government or the courts. This was an awful ruling, and I'm absolutely appalled by this court case. Next up, we got Employment Division of Oregon versus Smith held that the state could deny unemployment benefits to a person fired for violating a state prohibition on the use of peyote, even though the use of the drug was part of a religious ritual. Next up is Plessy versus Ferguson. This is the case that created the biggest opposition for civil rights in the 20th century, the separate but equal doctrine. This is up there with the worst and most infamous cases in the history of the country for pretty obvious reasons. I'm going to rapid fire the next three because I don't feel like making a long video, and they aren't necessarily bad, but they aren't that interesting. Schenck versus United States, a pretty mid case which involved limitations on free speech during wartime, setting a precedent for the clear and present danger test. McCulloch versus Maryland, a landmark case affirming the supremacy of federal over state law and establishing the constitutionality of the national bank. Marbury versus Madison, significant for establishing the principle of judicial review, asserting the Supreme Court's power to interpret the Constitution. Pretty mid overall. Coming in at number 4 is Engel versus Vitale, struck down organized prayer in public schools, asserting the separation of church and state. This case sounded impactful at first, but I don't think it affects much, not gonna lie. Next is Mapp versus Ohio, which the expanded Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. Not gonna lie, I forgot the numbering, so we got Miranda versus Arizona, which is important for establishing the Miranda rights, protecting individuals from self-incrimination during police interrogation. Next is United States versus Leon, addressed the good faith exception to the exclusionary rule, allowing evidence obtained unlawfully but in good faith to be admissible. I probably would have put this lower down, but I just forgot this one even existed, so I'm just gonna call this one an honorable mention.
Yo, Jamie, boot up a drumroll.
And coming in at number 1 is Sweat versus Painter. This case contributed to the desegregation of higher education by challenging the separate but equal doctrine. If you disagree, you're a racist.
Stay classy, stay cool, and don't be a fool.
Let's go! 'Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away, better know that I don't.